As you know, we have been working our way through the book of Proverbs. And one of the things that we've been learning throughout our study is the fact that wisdom is pretty much an essential element if we're going to navigate life successfully. Over and over, Proverbs has this direct link between wisdom, our ability to live the right way, and the success that comes with that. Now, in light of that wisdom, we know a few things. That was me, Tim. I didn't have it turned on. Go back one. We know a few things about wisdom. First of all, we know it comes from God. That's why in Proverbs it says the fear of the Lord. And when you hear that idea, fear of the Lord, think respect. Because of our respect for the Lord, it basically, the idea is it opens the door to receive His wisdom. And we know that wisdom is communicated to us by His Spirit through the Word of God, so that the more we look to the Bible for guidance, the more we look to the Bible for direction, the wiser we will become. We also know that wisdom is a rest of life process. There's no finish line. There's no, like, if you look at your coffee pot, it'll have a fill line. There's no fill line. There's no finish line. For the rest of our lives, there's always going to be room to grow. We also know no matter how much progress we make, no one has all the answers. One of the things I've noticed about me and in my life as I've gotten older, back when I was young, and I'm thinking like, later teenage years, early adulthood, when you're kind of looking out at the future and plotting your course. It's like, okay, I'm going to get this degree, and then I'm going to get this degree, and then I'm going to get this degree, and then I'm going to do this, and we're going to get married, and we're going to have kids, and we're going to buy a house, and we're going to live in, that house, and we'll have a white picket fence, and all that kind of stuff. And when you're young, it seems so simple and so easy. You just kind of make a plan, and you envision, this straight line of progress towards all your goals. And then what happens? Life. And life starts to unfold, and all of a sudden you begin to realize, man, this is a lot more complicated than I ever thought it was. It's bigger, and there's more problems than I have answers for. And wisdom recognizes that in a way that it intentionally chooses to live in community. And that's what we're going to focus on this morning. And what I mean by that is wisdom chooses to live interdependently, to include others and rely on others as we deal with the problems that life tends to throw in our way. And I think wisdom does that because, number one, that's how God designed us to live. In Genesis 2:18, at the very beginning of human history, God looked at Adam, He said, it's not good that the man should be alone. God designed us to live in community, and when we do live in community, it makes us better. And it's for a very simple reason. The people that you are living in community with, they've had different life experiences. They have different gifts. They have a different reservoir of wisdom from which you can draw on. And so when we live in community, it really does make us better. And more than likely, most of us, if not all of us, have experienced the fact that life has a way of stumping us. And the benefit of living in community is when that happens, we're not facing that moment alone. Now, if you're a believer, sure, you have God. And God has promised to never leave us, to never forsake us. He's with us always. But if you're living in community, not only do you have God, you have others in your life that you can lean on, that you can depend on, that can help you in those really difficult moments of life. So the plan this morning is we're going to look at a number of Proverbs. And these Proverbs are designed to kind of flesh out what it means to live in community and what it feels like and what it sounds like and that sort of thing, so that we can learn to live in community, because when we do, we will reap the benefits of living in community. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to focus on the value of what I'm going to call godly counsel. And we're going to start in Proverbs 15:22. Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. If you look at 12:15, the way of a fool seems right to him, but a wise man listens to advice. And one of the things we're going to notice as we continue to work through Proverbs, we're going to see two very different pictures. We're going to see a picture where someone's plans succeed, and we're going to see a picture where someone's plans fail. And we're going to look at those two pictures, and we're going to say, well, what's the difference? We do this in other texts. Remember when Jesus talked about the wise man and the foolish man? It's always important to ask the question, well, what's different here? Why did this man's house, remain steadfast in the midst of the storm? Why did this one collapse? And so we're looking for differences. And when I look at these Proverbs that we're going to look at, the difference between them seems to be directly tied to our willingness to receive counsel. Now, why is that? Well, when we make plans in isolation, when we don't include others in our decision-making process, what is true is now I'm vulnerable to my blind spots. And we all have blind spots. I talk about it quite often. I can see specks out there. What I cannot see is logs in my own eyes. And so I'm vulnerable to my blind spots. I'm vulnerable to my limited perspective. You know how I often compare my life and your life to, I've got one piece of a jigsaw puzzle. There's like millions of pieces in this jigsaw puzzle. Started all the way back in Genesis 1:1. It's going to go all the way forward throughout eternity. How in the world am I to understand what's going on in life when I've got one piece? You've got one piece. So we all have a very limited perspective, but the more people that are a part of our decision-making process, the more perspective we have. And we all have bias. If you look at verse 15 there, the way of the fool seems right to him. Well, of course it does. Do you intentionally make plans that you think this is a horrible plan? No, the way of a fool seems right to him. When I come up with a plan, I think, man, this is the best plan since sliced bread. But when you bring others into the decision-making process, they can see things that I can't. They can see things that I just don't want to see. Because I like my plan, and I want my plan as is. And so it's kind of like love is blind. If it's our plan, love might be blind. We see what we want to see. We hear what we want to hear. You know what I'm talking about. You bring others in. They can see things I can or I don't want to. So when we don't seek the wisdom of others, when we make plans in isolation, what are we actually saying? We're saying, I don't need your help. I don't need your advice. And there's a word for that in the Bible. It's called pride. And when we're proud, we're acting foolishly, because pride goes before failure. So if we are making plans it is very wise to make those plans in the context of community where we invite others and their wisdom and their gifts and their perspective into the process to help us come up with the best decision. And on a practical level, if we ask this question, what in the world do I have to lose by bringing others into the process? Because when I look at that, I think worst case scenario, they say something like, well, have you considered? And they refine my plan. Well, that's a good thing, isn't it? My plan just got better. Or maybe they just look at it and say, no, that looks really good to me. So your plan is confirmed. And both of those things, whether they're confirming or whether they are refining, that's way better than making a horrible decision where you've shot yourself in the foot. Now, let's look at a couple other Proverbs here. We've already looked at 12:15. Look at 19:20. Listen to advice and accept instruction, and in the end, you'll be wise. Again, he's reinforcing that idea that by including others, by accepting the advice and the counsel they offer, we're going to grow wiser, we're going to be better. Look at 21:29. A wicked man puts up a bold front, but an upright man gives thoughts to his ways. This is a really interesting proverb. That idea of a bold front. Some versions read they have a hardened face. What is that talking about? That's talking about the idea of being arrogant, of being stubborn, and of being overconfident. The idea is I am committed to my plan, and nobody and nothing better get in the way. Now, in contrast to that mentality, it says the upright gives thoughts to their ways. And the idea there is they pause and they examine their plan. They look at their motives. Why do I want to go in that direction? Why do I think this is the best way? They make sure they have their facts and all of the facts, and they have them in order. They're looking to make sure their plan aligns with God's plan and that their plans are pleasing to Him. Because they don't want negative consequences, and they don't want their choices and decisions to be hurtful to others. And so they take a moment and give thought to their ways. Now, how do we do that? Well, I think a great way to do that is bounce your thoughts and ideas off a few wise individuals. And like I said, they may clarify and confirm your thinking. They may tweak it. They may say, have you considered, and offer some suggestions that make it better. And both of those things are way better than making a bad decision. So we start with two very different pictures, where a plan succeeds, where a plan fails, and it's totally based on wise men are willing to receive counsel. Now, let's look at those outcomes, starting with 11:14. For lack of guidance, a nation falls, but many advisors make victory sure. And sometimes in our versions of the Bible, there's not a big deal between the words. And when you trace the history of the word, the etymology of the word, a lot of times it really doesn't make that big of a difference. This is one of those times where I think it gives us tremendous insight. That word guidance, for lack of guidance, actually comes from the sea. And it speaks of the skill that is used in navigating and driving I don't know, captaining a ship might be the better word. Now, have you ever been in a kayak or a canoe or a rowboat or like a power boat that's motorized? Y'all been in them? How hard are they to steer? Not hard at all, right? Now think of a ship, an ocean-going vessel. That's a whole different story. Because ships are really big. They're really complicated. I have a feeling, like, have you ever, like, getting on a plane and you look to your left real quick and look at the cockpit and all the stuff that's going on in there? Or if you've never done that, when you're walking out this morning, look at the spaceship controls that we have back there in the sound booth. It's like, okay, make that work. Good luck. It looks really, really complicated. I have a feeling that's what, in the steering room or the control room of a ship, I have a feeling that's what that looks like. And when you're driving a ship or captaining, there are a lot of things to take into consideration. That's why many advisors are necessary to make victory secure. The difference between success and failure, and we're looking at two very different outcomes. And like I said, we don't intentionally make plans that fail. But with many advisors, there's victory. But for lack of guidance, a nation falls. There's two very different outcomes, and they depend totally on our willingness to receive guidance and counsel from others. Look at, we've already looked at 15:22. Look down at 19:21. Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that will prevail. We looked at this a couple weeks ago, and it's really clear. The Lord's purpose is what will prevail. Well, what does that mean? In a practical sense, that means if my plan is not in alignment with God's plan, what's going to happen to my plan? It's going to fail. When our plans fail, what do we experience? Frustration, discouragement. Well, how do I get my plans aligned with God's plans? Again, there's no guarantee, but I have to conclude that if I bring more people into the decision-making process, people that know the Lord, people that love the Lord, people that have a heart for walking with God as I have a heart for walking with God, the likelihood that we together can have a plan that is more in sync with God's purpose, that's way more likely. As 15:22 says, plans fail for lack of counsel. But with many advisors, they are successful. Look at it. Look at Proverbs 21. This is a cool world. There is no wisdom, there is no insight, there is no plan that can concede against the Lord. I can saddle my horse, I can get ready for battle, I can have all my strategy, I could sharpen all my weapons, I could have the element of surprise, I could have everything going for me. But victory rests with the Lord. For waging war, you need guidance. For victory, you need many advisors. You take this first set of Proverbs we've looked at, and what we see is there's two very different pictures that lead to two very different outcomes. Wise individuals are willing to receive godly counsel that leads to success, and in contrast, fools tend to reject that counsel. They tend to go it alone, and as a result, their plans often fail because they're not in line with God's. Now, if that's true, and I believe it is, or I wouldn't be up here talking about it, what does that imply that we all need? if I'm going to receive godly counsel, doesn't it imply that we need men and women that can offer godly counsel in our lives? And so the next focus of our study this morning is, okay, if I'm going to receive godly counsel, I need people that are going to offer it to me. We start in 1523, which this will be shocking. It comes right after 1522, and we've looked at 1522 a couple times already this morning. Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. Look at how verse 23 connects to that. A man finds joy in giving an apt reply. What's an apt reply? It's a reply that is suited for this particular need. It's a reply that makes sense for this particular moment. So a man finds joy in an apt reply, and how good is a timely word? And so he's connecting the moment with the need and godly counsel. And when I add those things together, I think we can kind of edit 1522 just a bit, where it says plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. I would put the caveat, as long as those advisors are giving good advice. As long as they're giving good counsel. Because in the Old Testament, there are many stories where counsel was offered by many advisors, but it wasn't good counsel. Remember the story of Rehoboam and Jeroboam? They were, I always get these guys confused. And inevitably, I've got a 50% chance of being right, but I'm usually wrong. Is Rehoboam Solomon's son? Okay. Rehoboam inherits the throne from his father Solomon. He's got his father's advisors that counsel him. You know what? Your dad was a great guy. He did wonderful things. He made our kingdom the greatest it's ever been. But to get there, he was really hard on the people. And if you lighten up, they'll love you forever. But that was his father's advisors. And Rehoboam, as often young men are, they have their plans. That, I want a legacy. I want to be better than dad, that sort of thing. And so he went to his peers. And his peers said, they ain't seen nothing yet. If Solomon beat you with whips, I'm going to beat you with scorpions. I'm going to make you work harder. We're going to build more. We're going to tax you more. We're going to make the kingdom even better. And 10 tribes said, we're out of here. And the kingdom was divided. So he had many advisors. He just listened to the wrong ones. And there's many stories like that in the Old Testament. So it's not just having many advisors. It's having many advisors that can offer the kind of counsel we need. And that's described in verse 9 there, 27 verse 9. Now think about this. If we broke open some bottles of perfume and we burnt incense in the room this morning, what would happen? The whole room would be filled with that aroma, right? I like getting home at the end of the day, and I put the car in the garage, I walk through the laundry room, and I hit, our living space, which is our family room that's connected to the kitchen. And depending on what time it is, I can often, as soon as I hit that door, I know what we're having for dinner because it smells good. and I recognize that smell. And that's a good thing. That's a powerful sense that we have. And Solomon is using that as an illustration, if you will. Perfume and incense bring joy to the heart. It smells good. It's a pleasant aroma. It makes us feel good. He compares that to the pleasantness of one's friend when they offer us earnest counsel. What is earnest counsel? It's a really cool word. It is counsel that comes from the soul. Counsel that comes from the heart. And that's the kind of counsel you have from an intimate friend. And when they speak with your best interest in mind. They're speaking from the heart. They know you, and they love you, and they're trying to help you. And when you're facing one of those storms, when you're facing one of those difficulties, as we close, we're going to talk about what Larry Osborne calls need to know and need to grow moments. Every now and then life throws us a curveball. Ooh, I'm not sure what to do with this. A need to know moment. Or a need to grow moment. I kind of know what to do with this. I don't think I can. I'm not sure I'm able to do what needs to be done. So a need to know, need to grow moment. And when you're facing one of those kinds of moments and you have a good friend or a group of good friends, people who are like confidants, you can share what's going on in your life with the absolute trust that, man, when they open their mouth, when they share any kind of advice, it's coming from their heart. It's coming from their soul. And it's meant to be helpful. And going through hard moments is never a pleasant thing. But when you go through a hard moment and you have people like that in your life, it's like the room being filled with incense and perfume. It lightens the moment. But doesn't that mean that we have to know the difference between good counsel and bad counsel? So we're gonna do a little quick survey of some Proverbs. We're going to start with the bad counsel. This is the kind of counsel that we don't want to share. There is deceit in the hearts of those who plot evil, but joy for those who promote peace. No harm befalls the righteous, but the wicked have their fill of trouble. The first kind of counsel we should avoid is evil counsel. And often when we hear the word evil, we think of very ugly things. And it's certainly true that evil can be very, very ugly, but often evil is way more subtle. Do you have people in your life that... I hesitate to say this because in the past I've said it, that we haven't had very much drama in years around here. And not long after I said it the last time, we had some drama. But do you have people in your life that if there's some drama, it's like they want to throw some wood on the fire. They want to fuel the drama. That's evil. You have people that want to sow division, that want to sow discord. In Proverbs, it says 6 things the Lord hates. The 7th is an abomination unto him. You know what the 7th is? He that soweth discord among the brethren. You have people that scheme for selfish interests and selfish pursuits. That's what I mean. Evil can often be very, very subtle. And when we're in a position where we can offer advice and guidance to someone who's going through difficult moments, or they have to make one of those big life-dominating decisions, we shouldn't be focused on our self-interest, what would be best for us. We shouldn't try to steer them in any certain direction. We should be thinking, okay, what in this moment would God like to see happen, and what can I say and what can I do that could be helpful, that God could use as a tool to further his purpose, because only his purposes will succeed, and we shouldn't be thinking about ourselves at all. And if we do, that's evil. And that's why, if you look at the first stanza, there is deceit in the hearts of those who plot evil. Because if you're being deceptive, if you're thinking in evil ways, you have to camouflage that. You have to cover that up. You have to come off as if, hey, Tony, I'm really caring about you here. But I'm wearing a mask. I've got my true intentions covered up. Deceit and evil go hand in hand. And I say that because if you're speaking from your heart, giving counsel from the soul, if you're motivated by love, if you're focused on the well-being of that individual you're speaking with, do you need to be deceitful? No. You're speaking from your heart. You have their best interest in you. If you have to hide your motives, if you have to kind of manipulate things and leave certain things out and nuance certain things, if you have to do stuff like that, you're probably offering deceitful counsel. And that's the opposite of what God wants us to do and be. Tell you all the time, Ephesians 4:15, we are to speak the truth in love. So we should avoid evil counsel that is self-serving. We should avoid the kind of counsel that we need to use deceit to cover up. And we should avoid self-willed, self-serving counsel. Why? Because it's only the Lord's purpose that is going to prevail. As 21:30 says, there is no wisdom, there is no insight, there is no plan that can succeed against the Lord. And since that is true, there's just no room for any kind of self-will. Instead, we should be focused on, okay, as best as I can discern, what is God's purpose here? And I need to join him rather than expect him to come over and just bless my plan. I need to align with his plan. As Jesus did in the garden, he prayed, Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. But if not, let your will be done as opposed to my will being done. So we should avoid deceit, evil, self-will. Let's look at a way that we can do that, and I've shared this with you before. When we're about to open our mouth and share some advice, ask ourselves, what am I about to say? Is this true? Is it the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Or am I leaving things out because I have an ulterior motive? What am I about to say? Is it true? Why am I saying it? Is this meant to be constructive and helpful? Am I focused on their well-being or my own? When am I saying it? Remember, an apt word in a timely moment. Is this the best advice for this point in time? One of the things Jesus said to his disciples as he was getting ready to go to Gethsemane, where he would be arrested, was, I have a lot more to tell you. You're not ready for it just yet. We'll get to it, but you're not ready for it right now. Is this the kind of advice that is best for this particular moment? How am I saying it? Am I speaking from the heart? Are my tone, are my words, all my nonverbals, are they all in alignment? Am I saying this? Because sometimes what I have to say is going to be difficult to receive. Am I saying it in a way that they can receive it? And lastly, who's actually speaking here? Is this the kind of counsel, if Jesus was sitting right here and he was talking about this moment, this is the kind of thing he would share? Because if Jesus would share it, I'd say go for it. If this is not the kind of thing that Jesus would share, then I have no business doing so, do I? And so these are things we should avoid. Let's wrap this up by looking at the kind of counsel we should offer. The plans of the righteous are just. When we share advice, we should have the value of justice in mind. And the idea there is equity, it's fairness, it's rightness, it's honest, it's open, it's transparent. It's the opposite of the kind of counsel we just looked at, the evil, the self-willed, the counsel that is deceiving in nature. This is the exact opposite. We're not trying to exploit. We're not trying to manipulate. No, we're trying to find a path that is pleasing to God. And what is pleasing to God is justice, fairness, equity, rightness, and honesty. So we should be looking for justice. We should be looking to offer the kind of counsel that makes peace. There is deceit in the hearts of those who plot evil, but there's joy for those who promote peace. We should offer the kind of counsel that resolves conflict rather than fuels it, that seeks to reconcile wounded people, that seeks to replace things like hostility and animosity with tranquility and calm. As Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers, because they will be called the children of God. We are showing we have a family resemblance to God when we act as peacemakers. And the word for peace here is that well-known idea of shalom in the Hebrew, which is a huge concept that includes the wholeness of our being, that all of these different components that make up a well-balanced, well-lived life, they're all complete within the individual who is experiencing shalom. The idea of justice, the idea of well-being, the idea of harmony and freedom from hostility, they're all a part of shalom. And we are to be promoters of shalom. And look at what Solomon says when we do. There's joy for those who promote peace. Why? Because when you reconcile wounded people, or you resolve conflict, when you reconcile friends who have been estranged, when you diffuse an argument, when you've replaced someone who's experiencing anxiety and stress, and you give them peace through your counsel and through your advice, you've made a tangible difference. And that just feels good. When you've done something, and I often say there's a good pride and there's a bad pride. And when you do something that is helpful, that really makes a difference in someone's life, there's a sense of well-being that comes with that. You feel good. And that's what Solomon's saying. It's one of the reasons we ought to be peacemakers, because it feels good when you've made a difference. This is an interesting one. We'll dig into it a little bit. Good counsel is discerning. And I think that's important in our world, because way too often relationships in our world are kind of shallow and superficial. We live in a world where everyone's okay. I'm okay and you're okay. And the only problem with that is there are times in all of our lives when I'm not okay and you're not okay. But that's when we put our mask on. And we go to our default setting of I'm okay and you're okay, and let's not look under the hood because we might not like what we see. We're complicated beings. We have thoughts, and we have feelings, and we have intentions, and we have motives, and all of those things are not readily seen on the surface. And so when we get to one of those need to know and need to grow moments, yeah, we can offer very shallow, very superficial, very glib advice. But look at what the proverb says. Starts with the idea that we're complicated. The purposes of a man's heart are like deep waters. And we're looking to be the kind of counselor that can help that individual. And that means we need to be men of understanding that are able to look beneath the surface to get to the heart of the matter. Because have you ever dealt with people, and I have, that they keep ending up in the same place and they have no idea why? Why do I keep ending up here? That's complicated. It really is. We have thoughts, we have feelings, we have responsibilities, we have desires, we have relationships, we have careers. We probably have a bunch of stuff that I haven't even listed. And when you look at reality, oftentimes, okay, my responsibility is pulling me this way. My relationships are pulling me this way. My thoughts and desires are pulling me in a third direction. And here I am. I've been here before, and I don't know how I got here. And a man of understanding is patient. He doesn't offer hurried, kind of surface level answers. They do a lot of listening. They do a lot of observing. They ask a lot of questions because they realize how complicated we are. They realize how some of the parts of our being tend to be in conflict and be at tension with one another. And so they're trying to draw out why we think the way we think and feel the way we feel and make decisions the way we make decisions and end up in these same places. Because if we're ending up in a place we don't want to be, we need to change that pattern. And you can't change that pattern by going down the same road over and over again. I've shared this poem with you before. It's by Portia Nelson. And I'll give you the short version. I walk down the street, I fall in a hole. The next three stanza, it does the same thing until you get to the fifth stanza. I walk down a different street. Because if you keep walking down the same street, you're going to keep falling in the same hole. And a man of understanding can help you draw out how you end up in that hole. Does that make sense? Let me mention one thing and we'll wrap this up. And we're going back to Proverbs 27, verse 9. The perfume and incense is compared to the earnest counsel, the counsel that comes from the soul. The kind of counsel we need to offer is genuine. And again, in our digital world, I think that kind of counsel is being lost. At the dawn of human history, God said it's not good that man should be alone. We need people that can offer us earnest counsel. But all too often in our culture today, aloneness describes way too many people. We don't have those heart levels, those soul level relationships. They've been exchanged for things like Facebook friends and online followers and how many likes we get when we put something on the internet. When what we need are Proverbs 27 friends that offer us heartfelt, soul-level counsel. And if that's what we need, then that's what we need to become. We need to become a community of people that can receive and that can offer that kind of counsel. Now, let me try to wrap this up for today. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. Larry Osborne uses this phrase, need to know, need to grow moments. A need to know moment is, okay, I'm not sure what to do. Need to grow moment is, I'm pretty sure what to do. I'm not ready to do that yet. I need to grow into that. And basically, the kind of things that we've been talking about this morning and how that connects is when we come to need to know and need to grow moments in life, we were not designed to meet those moments alone. We are designed to meet those moments in the context of our relationship with God, who will never leave us or forsake us, who's with us always, who's made a promise to us, I can do all things through Christ, he will give us the strength. And we were designed to meet those moments in the context of relationship, as in it's not good that the man should be alone. And wisdom understands that. And that's why they choose to live in community. And when we live in community, some wonderful things happen. First of all, we bond. When we share life together, and what I mean by sharing life together, I mean the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because we live in an I'm okay and you're okay world. So, oh yeah, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. Well, where's the rest of it? Where's the bad and the ugly? We don't get to that level very often. But when you're living in community, Stuart has, and I've shared this with you before, he has spoken in some of the darkest, most evil moments in my life. And I can be evil and I can be dark. And he spoke into them. And if we were stuck in I'm okay and you're okay, for all I know, I could still be in that dark spot. When we live in community, we bond. When we live in community, we grow stronger. Proverbs says, iron sharpens iron, right? A man sharpens the counsel of a friend. So we get stronger, and because we're stronger, we are overcomers. When I say, I can do all things through Christ, he'll give me the strength, doesn't mean I know how to do all things right now. I might have to learn to do all things. It might mean the way God gives me strength is he brings these people into my life who can support me and help me because they have different gifts and they have different experience and they have a different reservoir of wisdom. But when we live in community, we can overcome. And so here's what I want us to do. To be that kind of community, we need to commit to knowing the truth, because you can't offer something you don't know. So we need to know the truth. We need to live the truth, and that's the difference between knowing and being. I can tell you the truth. I need to put my money where my mouth is. I need to live the truth so that you can see the truth in action. So we need to commit to knowing the truth, living the truth, sharing the truth with one another, being willing to receive truth from each other so that we are bearing one another's burdens, so that we're doing life together, so that we are living in community. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to stop having storms. We're going to have storms as long as we live in a broken world. But we won't face those moments alone. And in community, we'll learn and we'll grow and we'll be better. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this insight. And I think more and more in our society, we're becoming more isolated. So much of life is taking place online, in a virtual world as opposed to the real world. We're losing the kind of face-to-face, soul-level, heart-level relationships that are so necessary to navigate our broken world. And I think there's a reason you've given us all these Proverbs. You want us to live in community, to live interdependently. When I'm weak, you help me be strong. And when you're weak, I help you be strong. That's how you designed us to live. Not in isolation, not in aloneness, but in community. And so, Father, I pray that your Holy Spirit would be doing a work in each of our hearts, because relationships are tricky business. In some ways, it comes easier for some than others. But I don't think any of us can have too many of the kind of people that we're talking about this morning in our lives. We need soul-level, heart-level friendships that can offer us godly counsel when we need it, that we can offer godly counsel to when they need it. And so if there's any fear in trying to develop those kinds of relationships, Father, I pray your Holy Spirit would just chip away at that fear. And that we would have a heart that says, no, I need to move in this direction. This is what I need to be. This is what I need to have to live successfully. And I pray in the days ahead, we will see growth in our relationships where we are bonding and becoming closer and becoming stronger in a way that life is getting better. And I lift it up to you and ask that you would make it so, to the praise of your glory. Amen. Thank you so much.